everyone, and welcome to another video. So I'm back, and I'm actually going to be interviewing the narrator of Assassin, Brandon J. Peterson. So welcome. I'm so excited to be doing this. I've interviewed only one narrator before, which was Timothy McKean, the narrator of Hunter. I'll have that as a card or something here for you guys. But I'm excited to be here, so welcome. I guess we should start with just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became an audiobook narrator and all the good little details about you.
Sure. Yeah. So like you said, my name is Brandon. I started narrating audiobooks, I think 2 years ago now, and it kind of came about when my wife and I kind of had this routine of I would read a book to her. We just kind of read to each other every night, and I've always enjoyed voice acting and stuff. I like to play Dungeons and Dragons and whatnot, and
I do too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I was like, it'd be kind of cool if I could, what does it take to become an audiobook narrator? And so I started doing a little bit of research, and I found ACX, which is Audible's audiobook program. And I signed up, and I just started doing auditions, and before you know it, now I read audiobooks. So
That's amazing. It's fun that you started off, I was playing D&D and reading books and little things like that. Like, I'm a big fan of D&D too, so I feel like I could if I really wanted to, but I focus most of my time and attention on writing. I tried my own once, but I just don't like the editing part. The editing is just so tedious.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I barely manage by with my YouTube channel, and that's the extent of what I can spend my time editing, honestly.
Yeah, I often dream of the day when I make enough money to pay somebody else to do that part of it.
Yeah, I get that. I wish I had a team for my YouTube channel. It'd be so like, here's the video, you go do that. I can, focus on what I want to do.
Exactly.
So what is your process for narrating audiobooks? Do you have a system, how you like to do things? I know every narrator is different, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of been a work in progress a little bit. There's been times where, where I'll go through and I'll read the whole book and really, try and really flesh everything out. And there's other times where it kind of feels like with the little introduction that kind of like when you gave over the rundown of the characters and whatnot, it was like, great, I've got the characters fleshed out. I can kind of run through it. And it's mostly it's me sitting in a dark room with a microphone about this close to my face and just reading this book and kind of getting to know these characters. And it's kind of lean back into D&D. It's very much like D&D of just like you kind of just let the characters do their thing, and the hard work of coming up with the story has already been done. All I have to do is just read it,
Yeah.
So,
I get
once the voices are figured out, as long as I can remember whose voice is whose, which that can be tricky sometimes, but typically it's like once the voices are figured out, the story just kind of tells itself. It's especially when the writing's as good as yours is, it just kind of flows. So
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me. So I've been through a lot of editing process and stuff. So I edited when my first narrator quit. I did another edit through before I sent it to you. I was like, I'm going to make sure this thing's polished for the next, just make sure. So it's been an interesting story of how Assassin came to be narrated, but it's really interesting that you just kind of let the characters, you just kind of let the feel for what the characters would sound like and stuff. So I feel like it would be really hard to remember the voices. I have a horrible memory, so I'd have to I don't know, do some sort of reference or something. Okay, what was this guy again? Who did this sound like? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a few times where I'll have to jump back to a previous chapter and I'll listen to a few minutes. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I got it. And it's funny because my wife and I read books. My wife previously. We read a series called the Sword of Truth series. I don't know, by Terry Goodkind. I don't know if you've ever read the books, but they're really good. But there are a lot of voices in that book, and so my wife will be like, "Oh, that's so and so's voice that you're using for this character," or "That's so and so." And so she kind of has these references her own. Which character voice I'm using. So
right, that's funny. So what's your favorite genre to read, and then what's your favorite genre to narrate? Is it the same? Does it overlap, or is it different?
Yeah, so it's it's been interesting. When I first started, I really wanted to get into sci-fi and fantasy.
Hmm.
Those felt like, those are my favorites to read. I really like reading um, that genre. But it's kind of been funny. The more the books that I typically get picked up for are more like crime thrillers, or typically books where the character is kind of this broody, this
You have
kind
that
of
voice.
yeah,
I can
yeah.
see
And so
that.
it's funny to me because like even when like in high school and stuff, when I would do musicals or plays or things like that, it was like I know my character. I'm either the bad guy or I'm the funny sidekick. I'm one of the two. I'm not a main character guy typically. I'm the bad guy, the one who comes in from the dark.
Mhm.
I'm that guy.
Yeah, I know when I heard you're Lavius, I was like, oh God, I'm getting chills. Like, I haven't gotten chills for my own book in like ever, not with this one. And so I'm like, he does Lavius so well, it freaks me out, which is the villain and assassin for those of you who may not know. But yeah, I can definitely, it's really interesting that it's like comedy or the bad guy. It's like, that's two
Yep.
completely different roles.
Yep.
So that's cool.
Yep.
I like that. Speaking of voices and characters and stuff, so how did you go about finding the right voice for like Aidan and Sevlia? Like, because those are the main two characters in the book.
Yeah. So Aidan was kind of an interesting one. It was just kind of putting myself in that situation of feeling that disconnect of just everything good in life, and just like, yeah, I'm here, I know my job, I do my job, and I just do it. Just I'm just
I
gonna
love it.
just and it's kind of that situation, and just kind of removing all the emotion out.
Hmm.
It kind of just kind of came to that point. Um, it was it was fun that way to kind of, and then as well to kind of, as he kind of grows in the book, to kind of feel the voice change and flow a little bit, but at the same time it's just like
Hmm.
he still has a past he's dealing with, but
Yeah, I know. It was just for me, like when I'd had one narrator, Ethan, and he did the whole book, and then he couldn't get around to the editing process, and because he quit narrating entirely, and I was like, oh my God. And
oh
I had fallen
no.
in love with his voice. I had listened to the whole audiobook twice at that point because it was my first audiobook, so I listened to it for fun and didn't realize I needed to go through and actually listen to it to fix the
Right.
mistakes. And then when he quit on me, I was like, what? Like, you did such a good Pierce. Like, who am I supposed to find? Like, how, I was devastated. And so, I was also still new, like, to the audiobook process from the author side of things. And so, but
Hmm.
when I found and then I started listening, I was like, I can't even remember what Ethan sounded like because you're Aidan. Like, you just became Aidan. And I thought also, being a male narrator, how the heck did you nail Sevlia? I was like, he does her better than I do because I've tried to read for her parts for a few random things before. And I'm like, what? How does he do her better than I do? It was so, I'm like, I'm like, he is Sevlia now too. And that's a weird thing to say, but you just nailed her.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's very interesting. It's always kind of a scary endeavor when I see there's a strong female lead in a book, especially if it's if she's very feminine, or she's very like
Mhm.
Sevlia is very very noble, and I sometimes I worry, I don't want it to come across as like, oh, so girly, or I don't want it to be
Yeah.
sound just so ridiculous. And I've listened to a lot of different narrators to try and do research of like, how do people like Simon Vance do female voices? How do people, these the bigger narrator names, how do they go about doing it?
Hmm.
And it's almost not so much about the pitch. Almost, it almost feels like you just soften yourself up, and especially when you have a strong character like Aidan, who's that dark, gruff. It's easy to kind of just give it a little more life to it, and it kind of
Yeah,
flows a
and it
little better.
automatically,
So
yeah, that makes so much sense because it's like you said with Aiden, such strong and dark, and it's like okay, you have, and Sevlia kind of really offsets that. So that's really, I love hearing about the process because it's so fascinating to me because I just like it's not something I know a whole lot about, and it's just like it's so much fun. So, what was your favorite scene to narrate? Did you have like a favorite scene that like you kind of enjoyed more than some of the others when you were narrating?
oh yeah, there any scene with Pierce, because Pierce's voice is just a lot of fun. His voice is just a lot of fun. Those were fun scenes. I also like the parts with oh no, I can't remember his name. When the darkness kind of comes full force out, you can hear that that voice change. That really, we really get to hear the bad guy voice.
Yep, the corrupted people.
Yeah, once you can hear the corruption, that was a lot of fun. Just because, like I said, I do play a lot of bad guys, and so to kind of really lean heavy in on the bad guy part of just really, it was a lot of fun.
I got chills. So
it was. I know I'm doing a good job when it's 9:00 at night and I'm narrating one of those parts, and I get done narrating and I'm like,
is there anything around. Like, am I okay? That's funny. Oh, I love that. I know it feels like Assassin was almost perfect for you, because it's one of the only ones that really gets heavy-handed with the corruption, because it was like in the series timeline, the corrupted are going through all these worlds, and it was a prequel originally before it became book 4. And so it's the first time that we encounter corrupted. Aidan was the first chosen to ever, he's the only one to ever face one and live, right? And so it leans into that a lot more. So I'm like, it feels like it was a perfect fit for you. And then Pierce is like one of my favorite characters. I'm like, and you did it so, I was like, I'm never going to find anybody as good as Ethan, but then I found you and you did it like even better. I'm just like, I may have to have him do Pierce's book now too, because like, oh my gosh, and it kind of like that moment with Pierce, like adds a little bit of like levity and kind of lightheartedness to this otherwise kind of dark book. And so it, like, your voice really, like, I giggled like a schoolgirl every time. I'm like, oh, that's Pierce, and I just started fangirling so much, because it was like it was just so much fun to listen to.
Yeah, it's a fun voice, and it's funny to especially when a lot of times I'll notice as I'm recording, a lot of times your posture changes even when you kind of read those parts. Like you go from that kind of dejected to kind of just like straightforward, and then Pierce, it's kind of that cocky, the jaunty, like, all right, let's.
I love it. Oh my gosh. What was the hardest scenes for you to do in the book?
What were the hardest scenes? Because I'm not super well versed with like very emotional parts, it's a lot more difficult for me as a narrator to kind of. I really want to try and portray those deep emotional parts that aren't just anger or levity or the fighting. Really, those moments when it slows way down and it's either romantic or it's very sad. Those parts oftentimes for me, it's like I stress about those the most. I don't know if they're the most difficult, but I stress about them the most, because I'm like I can feel the emotion that's coming from the page, and I hope that I can portray that back out into people's ears. But yeah, those are the ones I stress about the most.
I can understand that. Like, you want to make sure that people can hear it in your voice. I know for me, like Assassin, I wrote it a really long time ago, and it was one of the first that I wrote in the series. So this has been like 10 years ago. And so it was a book. I wrote it. It's fine. It was a fan favorite when it went big on Wattpad, but I don't care about it. Aidan's a fan favorite, and I haven't really felt anything for it in so long. And then when I'm listening to your voice in the audio, I'm just like, I'm feeling so many things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't felt anything for this book in a long time. I'm just like, I'm as emotionless as Aidan, when it comes to the story. I'm like, okay, but you really nailed that. And for me, like, emotion's really important when you're listening to an audiobook, like just in general, like I want to feel what the characters are feeling. When I hear it, I'm going to cry, I'm going to laugh, that sort of thing. So you're a really good narrator. Like, I just want to emphasize that. Like, I love your narration, like just in general.
Thank you.
What was my next question here? So what are some other audiobooks that you've narrated that, like, that or, that you've done that you really enjoyed doing?
So the one that I did fairly early on, I think it may have been the third book I ever produced, was Brave Rider. And that's a Western about like a Pony Express rider. Oh. And that one was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun just for the cast of characters, and just kind of to get to be a cowboy and a bunch of cowboys out with some Indians for a month or so. That was a fun one. It was really, really good story. Just a feel good story. A lot of fun. One I'm working on right now is the Frozen Planet series. And it's it's a sci-fi horror, and it's got like a lot of sound effects. It's taken me forever to do because there's so many sound effects and things like that in it, and it's a lot of fun that way. It's very, very different from anything I've done so far, just because I don't really do a whole lot of horror, but it's been a lot of fun. It's bigger over in the UK. The author's from the UK.
That's cool.
But yeah, it's that. I think honestly, that's one of the most fun things about being an audiobook narrator is I get to kind of kick back and do the easy part. If someone else comes up with the story, and then I just get to read a bunch of different stories. So I mean, it's pretty great as far as my end goes. But
that is really cool. I lost my train of thought. I was going to reply to that, and then my brain just randomly forgot everything. Oh yeah, the sound effects. I feel like that's going to be really fun to listen to because you have like it feels like a movie in your head. I've recently gotten into the dramatized audiobooks with like a full cast, music, sound effects, and so I'm like, oh, that would be so much fun to listen to. So. And sci-fi is kind of a perfect genre for that because you have all the different sci-fi elements and stuff. So that sounds really, really cool. So do you have any advice for anybody who may be interested in becoming an audiobook narrator or just in general wanting to find out more, getting like any tips and tricks and things?
Yeah. So one of the things, I guess in my journey, a lot of it has kind of been, you got to pay your dues a little bit of you got to, you're putting the work and you're grinding. And it's a lot of just finding out what your voice does, and really knowing, because it's like I said, I thought for sure, I was like, oh, I'm going to read these wonderful fantasies and whatnot. And it has been like, no, you're going to read these dark crime thrillers and you're going to read about these intense villains, and so it's a journey of learning where you fit and then really just kind of realizing this is what I'm good at. And everyone has some area that they're good at. And that's one thing that I've been amazed at as you listen to audiobooks is, sometimes I'll start listening to an audiobook and I'm like, oh, I cannot stand this narrator. This is going to be bad. But then you get past chapter 2 and you're like, no, it fits, and it works. And I think some of the tips and tricks are just know that editing is going to take forever. It's going to be hard, but it's important. Don't let the drudgery of editing kill the joy of creativity, I guess would be one of my big things. Sometimes you have to edit something so many times that you get to the point where you're like, I don't care about this anymore. I don't care about this project. I am so done. Just get it out. And, but the thing is like, I've had books where I've just kind of rushed through the editing, just trying to get them out as fast as I possibly could. And then, I go back and listen to it and I'm like, I wish I could do it again. I wish I could do it again. So I could make it. I know I can make it better, but that's the journey, right? You're a little bit better each and every time. And so just roll with the punches, I guess.
Basically, don't do what I did when I did my first audiobook and I got to the editing part. I mean, I was like, I hate this. I breathe way too much. I can't do this. I just need to stop breathing and quit. And I've never listened to that book again. I've never read that book again. And I've never done another audiobook for myself before because I've thought about it because I love, getting into character and like D&D, all the stuff.
Right,
and I can't get past the editing part. So don't do like me. Follow his advice and you'll be fine. So that's great. But for any authors interested in hiring you or readers who want to listen to more of your audiobooks, where can they find you? I'll probably have links in the description because it's easier, but if, you can give that to me afterwards, but where can everybody find you who wants you basically?
Right. So, I'm on ACX, which so if you go to the ACX, you can find me on there. Just my name's Brandon J. Peterson.
Yep.
All of my books, I think, are on Audible. I don't think I have any that aren't on Audible at the moment. But they're all there. So if you want to listen to any of the books that I've done, they should all be there. There's several that are coming out, several that are in the works, and hopefully many more on the way. We'll see. But and then I've also got a podcast that's kind of been an off and on project of mine. It's called Story Time by Brandon Peterson, and basically, I'm trying to take the classics. So right now I've been working on Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Ooh.
And then I read that and I add, different voices and sound effects and try and put like one voice over on this side and then a voice answering on this side. So
That's cool.
It's been fun. But
I feel like it fits your voice. I think Dracula would definitely fit your voice. Again, the dark and brooding thing.
Yep. Yeah, you find your niche and you stick with it.
Yep. So that's really cool. This has been wonderful. But it's been really fun interviewing you. I'm glad that we finally got to catch up with each other because I know busy schedules just kept getting in the way. But if you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you like my interview with Brandon J. Peterson, then check out my interview of Timothy McKean, who narrated Hunter, the first book. So like the first one and the fourth one. That's only two I've managed to get together with. Check it out. I'll have it here, the description and all the jazz. You guys can go check it out. It's a lot of fun. So